Welcome to the East Harris County Manufacturers Association Roundtable Discussion on Remote Confined Space Monitoring. I'm Richard Bass from Kuraray, America, and our mission statement for the EHCMA Best Practices Committee is to promote safety and sustainability within the East Harris County Manufacturers Association community and identifying those best practices and sharing them with our members. So we'll go around the table and do introductions.
Yeah, I'm Reid, and I'm a Health and Safety Transformation Leader at Vista Houston.
Paul Shelton, HESQ Manager at Arkema.
Wendy Key, Hyco Safety Lead at Air Products and Chemicals.
Jason Petrillo, Health and Safety Specialist, Lyondell Laporte.
All right, I'm going to start with Jason at this time. How long have you been part of doing remote confined space monitoring?
I think that the first remote monitoring that I can recall was around a decade ago. We, when it first came into conversation, I was incredibly skeptical. I didn't think that replacing the person, the human variable, I didn't think that a remote monitoring system would see gaps, would recognize hazards, and the first time I saw it in practice, systems being monitored, far better than what I had experienced with personnel in the past.
All right, Ridge, how about you?
Yeah, so I've been in health and safety about 10 years, and pretty much right when I started, I saw the first introduction, one of our outages we had, so just about 10 years.
Okay. And I know Paul and Wendy, I talked to you guys earlier, and you guys are really looking at remote confined space monitoring. So are there some certain questions you have for these two?
Well, I mean, some of the things we want to make sure when we go down that path is, obviously, how you determined your success with the process, and what were the pitfalls, that I can avoid, so I don't make those same mistakes.
Well, I'll tell you, there's multiple systems we've seen utilized, and I haven't seen them deployed for short duration monitoring. Generally speaking, the cost is better for long lead columns or vessels. But when we have deployed them or utilized their systems, their monitoring systems are incredibly capable. Camera outside, camera inside. They're actually catching hazards that the workers inside the vessel aren't seeing. Fires, PPE concerns, people performing hot work in a space that they weren't permitted for hot work. The vendor actually caught that, brought it to our attention. We stopped the job, and we felt like those things were successes.
Yeah, so I mean, the confined space attendant, they can't see everything from the outside, right? So once you put those cameras inside and you got good locations, you can see pretty much throughout the whole entire process of the work going on is, what they're actually doing in the space, and then, since they're part of that permit, I mean, they understand, for the attendants that are watching it, they understand what the work is allowed to be in there. So they're also watching for hazards that a confined space attendant wouldn't be able to see from the outside. So it's kind of one more of those checks and balances that we typically won't be able to see unless you're physically in the space.
So with the remote monitoring, somebody's sitting looking at a monitor from a trailer or some other location and watching what's going on. So you basically have another set of eyes.
Yep, that's correct. So what I've seen utilized is a BRM. They'll have their TVs for their spaces. Like I said, 2 cameras at every hole, and their one technician is only allowed to monitor so many cameras at one time, and they have their eyes on their 12 cameras, which will be 6 spaces. The people will come, they'll push a button, let you know that they're at their space. They'll badge in, which has been that's a pre-process. They go through a badge in and have a special activation on their TWIC card. So they can badge into the space. The accountability is electronic and automatic. And when they push the button to get permission, the attendant will check the air monitoring. It's also remote, and so they'll give them permission to go into the space.
So Jason, you brought up a good point. With the badging in, you have to badge in and out. And you get the records of that at the end, right? So that's your entry log. so for that confined space. So I mean, that's something. How well does that work for you?
We've seen it successful. If you go up and if you didn't go through their pre-screening process and their training, your badge would not work. But they would get an alarm that someone is attempting to badge in and it is not a recognized badge. So they'll call you on there's a microphone, it's a two-way speaker. They'll call you on that and ask you, what you're doing. And a lot of times we'll see inspectors that they didn't go through the training yet. So they'll say, hey, you have to come in and go through our training. They'll come into the BRM, they'll train them, and then they can go out and inspect the space. Whereas an entry attendant wouldn't have any idea if this person was allowed to be in the space or not.
So obviously this works really well, but at what point, for instance, if you only have 1 or 2 confined space going on in a site, would it be cost effective to do that? How many would you really need to have in order to make it cost effective?
Well, I've seen it utilized on capital projects and especially in turnarounds. I've never been on the budgeting piece of it, but I know that as we have had those discussions, generally the more spaces and the longer duration, the more sense it makes, because you have to deploy a whole IT network to communicate and all the cabling and temporary power and things like that. So the more spaces, the longer duration, the more budget friendly it is.
And Wendy, I think one of the advantages that that Jason hasn't talked about yet is you have the ownership. So you're writing one confined space permit. All the other people are getting a permit to work or a hot work permit to work inside of it, but you have a company who's taking ownership of that confined space. And so now you're not having 5 different hole watches for, or that's exaggeration, but sometimes, but say you have multiple companies going into the same confined space, they don't want to take the liability of allowing other people to go in under their permit. So now it takes a long time to issue a confined space permit. So that's a big advantage there too, is because that company takes the ownership of that confined space.
Definitely reduce congestion in the areas. They have all sorts of camera mounts. So they'll have the outside camera pointed where you tell them to point it. The inside camera doing the same, and it's mobile to as work progresses, either laterally or elevation wise. And I think Ridge was saying earlier that an entry attendant, there's just things they can't see without breaking the plane. And then when they break their plane, they're an entrant themselves, and kind of a double-edged sword there. So there are definitely some huge advantages to the way this is set up. And like I said, for 10 years ago, roughly, I was the person not on board. And then I saw it implemented, and it's progressed since then. It's significantly better than it was 10 years ago. And I bought in on it then.
Yeah, so I've heard now that they actually can run temperatures and do temperature monitoring of the confined spaces as well, and set up parameters where if it gets above a certain temperature, they can stop the work, and then you have to bring in like an HVAC system or something.
We've seen that as well. Similar thing with airflow monitoring. They have airflow indicators inline tied into different process streams, and so they can actually tell you how many air changes an hour and things like that. So IH likes it as well.
Yeah.
Is there any AI associated with any of this that might be able to see something before maybe you or I could recognize it?
Paul, anything AI related is probably best pointed at Ridge. He's the techie one.
Oh, so we haven't really integrated that far in, but I know there are a lot of softwares that a lot of other groups are using during their outages and turnarounds using similar cameras and setup. So I'm sure there are ways that you can integrate the AI to recognize those hazards and send those notifications, or however you have those set up.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, some of the companies that are out there that they're working on their software, kind of like the remote proctoring, right? Like when you have like people in school and they're taking that class and they're taking a test where they have AI that's watching and it's looking for things that you're doing. So that's some things that the AI kind of helping to monitor, that'll flag like a screen if something doesn't look right or is out of the ordinary. And that's some of that AI technology that helps out those people.
Yeah, I think one of the other big advantage is coming from the monitoring side, like atmospheric monitoring and temperature and air changes per hour, all that stuff is, really thought out, and you can get really good levels throughout the whole entire vessel. It's not just one person with a hose right at the manway, right? That may not get really representative sampling of the people at the top trays or the middle trays. You can get those instrumentation throughout the whole entire vessel, and it really makes it really easy to look at all the atmospheres within the space. So really from the personal safety side, it makes you a lot more comfortable than just having kind of the host known in there where that entrant is.
Yeah, and I know with my experience, I don't know with y'all's too, that all the different companies, that it's not just someone sitting in a BRM. They actually have rovers outside. They go by those locations. That's what they do. They go by, checking the equipment, making sure that people are okay. They even yell out, "Hey, everything okay in there?" just to kind of get the discussions going. So that was something that actually helped our group when they knew that it wasn't just somebody sitting behind a computer screen, that there were actually people outside going by those confined spaces.